Obama and Trump. The U.S. president has met the president-elect. What will happen when President Trump meets the world? I'm Brent Goff, and this is The Day. The Trump felt round the world.
I think the big question is will Donald Trump be a pragmatist? Will he act like a businessman? Or will he succumb to his worst instincts?
How will the most controversial U.S. president in living memory use his superpower? Can President Trump be a force for maximum good? Or the ill will of his presidential campaign, will it spread and infect the rest of the world?
If this populism from Brexit to Donald Trump getting victory extends into like the AfD in Germany, Marine Le Pen in France, those kinds of people coming to power, that would pretty much be the end of the European Union, of the Eurozone. So that is a big risk.
Welcome to the program, everyone. How to explain what happened Tuesday in America. Tonight, our U.S. correspondent on witnessing history and the unreal that became real. That's coming up later on in the show tonight. We begin the day with a meeting of men, but not a meeting of the mind. U.S. President Barack Obama today welcomed the man who will soon move into the White House, President-elect Donald Trump. Trump entered the White House through the South Lawn entrance, reportedly to avoid news cameras and the eyes of the White House staff. And so begins a transition at the top, as tense as any has ever been. Although we must give credit to both of these men, they put on a very civil, almost friendly face. Take a look.
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump. It was wide-ranging. We talked about some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. And as I said last night, my number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful.
We discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
There you see that, the handshake there in the Oval Office today. Well, emerging tonight, a senior Russian diplomat has reportedly confirmed the Russian government was in touch with members of Trump's political team during the election campaign. The Russian government apparently knows many of Trump's closest allies. Now, Trump has not responded to a request for a comment on this. This will certainly fuel suspicions that were given a voice by Hillary Clinton when she accused Trump of being a puppet of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Well, Trump's ties to Russia may be in question, but his influence around the world, it is as obvious as ever. Marine Le Pen, the leader of France's far-right National Front, has openly applauded the election of Trump, calling his rise to power a great movement across the world. Take a listen to what she had to say.
What happened wasn't the end of the world, but the end of our world. The Americans gave themselves a president of their choosing, and not the one that the establishment wanted them to rubber stamp as if the election were just a formality or just held to keep up appearances.
Yeah, some chilling words, or just a lot of hot air. Which is it? Is the Trump presidency, is it a threat to America's allies, such as Germany? Well, I'm joined here in the studio by Dagmar Freitag. She is chairwoman of the German-U.S. Parliamentary Friendship Group. Madam Chairwoman, it's good to have you here at the big table with us.
Thank you.
I want to start with this report that the Russian government has been in contact with the Trump campaign all along. Now, you can perhaps remember during the debates, he
Yes,
said
I
he didn't know anyone, he didn't have any contact. And now we're hearing the opposite. Does that alarm you?
It's not surprising, I would say. I do not know if it is true, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is true.
What did you think when you heard, we've been talking about this all week, what did you think at the moment you heard that Donald Trump had won the U.S. election?
To be honest, I couldn't believe it. I stayed up nearly all night. I fell asleep for 2 hours maybe, and from 3 o'clock on in the morning, I followed everything on TV, and I simply couldn't believe it. It took some time.
And it was this sense of disbelief. How is that going to play out with what you do on this committee? I mean, the committee is called the Parliamentary Friendship Group.
Sure. This will not change. I think it's a very important thing to have friendship groups like that. We have a counterpart on the American side. And fortunately enough, we have established good contacts to congressmen in the United States. And I have two counterparts, Charlie Dent and Ted Deutsch, and I found out they have been re-elected. So when I go to DC in the beginning of December, I will have two reliable counterparts to talk to.
Will you be meeting with President-elect Trump in December?
I don't think so.
Is Donald Trump Germany's friend?
Let's wait and see. We had some disturbing remarks from his side, but I think we will have to find out if a president, Donald Trump, will act in a different way than he acted and made remarks as candidate. There will be a difference, hopefully, from my point of view.
And is that credible for you? Because we've been hearing that in the last 48 hours as well, that the candidate is going to be completely different from the president. But how does that sit with you? Can you believe someone who, one day he's, Dr. Jekyll, and the next day he's Mr. Hyde?
I cannot really believe. I can only say I hope so. Probably he won't act differently in any way, but there were some really disturbing remarks. I can only repeat that. And hopefully he will have some moderate advisors that tell him how to deal as a politician and not as a candidate.
During the campaign, Donald Trump attacked the German chancellor numerous times. And I'm quoting him here. He said, Angela Merkel has ruined Germany. That's not what a friend says, is it?
Not really, but we will have another idea about his way of dealing after Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Trump have met for the first time in their new roles.
What did you make of the way the Chancellor congratulated Mr. Trump yesterday? The tone, I mean, it wasn't, we can't say that it was bubbling over with affection, can we?
Oh, well, that's not her job. I think the tone was okay. She told very quietly what she is expecting, and I think it's the right way to deal with the facts.
Now, you've had other lawmakers in Parliament, in the Bundestag, who have been very open in their criticism of Trump, and including the foreign minister, Frank-Walter Steinmeier. He says relations could be much more difficult with a President Trump. Who do you think is... I mean, are you going to be the optimist, or do you think the realists are the ones who are actually going to win this lottery?
I would say more or less I'm a realist, but I think we as politicians have been elected on both sides of the Atlantic to do our very best. And to do the very best means to talk to each other and to try to find solutions for challenges that we have to cope with.
I want to play a clip for you that says a lot about what some people here in Europe are thinking, and that is in terms of security, NATO, and what can be expected from the United States. Let's take a listen to that right now.
The widespread notion that America will continue to provide security for Europe until the end of time is one that people should forget about, regardless of U.S. election outcomes. We have a lot to be thankful to the Americans for, especially here in Berlin and Germany. But they won't guarantee Europe's security forever. That's something we must do for ourselves, and that's why we need a new drive for a European defense union with the goal of a European army. That's the direction things should be headed, even if many Europeans don't realize it yet.
Okay, we've got the head of the European Commission there saying that we're going to build a European army because America is not going to give us this security umbrella forever. Is Donald Trump going to be the U.S. president that will force the Europeans, as he says, to finally pay for their own security?
Maybe. I do not really know. But I think we have to state that the European Union is not in its best condition currently. So that means we have to work on that. And talking about a common defense policy would not be the worst idea from my point of view.
But we've been doing that for a long time, though, haven't we? A common defense policy.
Yes, but you know how difficult it is. It's that difficult to find common solutions among all those members of the European Union. So you can't do it within a day. But maybe there will be a pressure to think about it more than in the past.
What about the notion of Berlin being this bridge between Washington and Moscow and Kiev as well? President Obama has been very open. He calls Angela Merkel. She is really his connection to that part of the world. It's not going to be that way, though, with Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. What's going to happen to Germany's leverage? Are you going to be squeezed out by two strong men in a bromance?
This is a question I can't answer tonight, but I think Germany's role is important, has been important, and will be important in the future.
Have you been talking about that possibility, though, that your influence could be diminished?
I think we talked a lot about the result of the election. We talked about a lot about the possible consequences, and this is, of course, one of them, but you really can't predict. Let's wait for some more days, please.
I have to say that I think you're remarkably relaxed, because if you listen and believe what President-elect Trump says, he's talking about a radical paradigm shift, something we haven't seen since, the end of the Cold War.
Definitely, that's right. But on the other hand, there can't be a reason to act now in a way that's not sensible. We have to talk about it, we have to think about it, and we have to deal with a new challenge. That's our task, and I think Germany will play its important role, and I think we will have to.
All right. Dagmar Freitag, Chairwoman of the German-U.S. Parliamentary Friendship Group. Madam Chairwoman, thank you very much for being on the day. We appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you.